Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to IMA and joining the conversation for Count Me In. I'm your host, Adam Larson, and once again I'm joined by my co-host, Mitch Rochon. Our episode for today is at the center of all skills needed to be a successful accounting and finance professional as we listen to our conversation with Dr. Mark Frigo on the topic of strategic leadership. Mitch, you spoke with Dr. Frigo. How did it go?
Dr. Frigo is an excellent speaker, and it was a pleasure talking with him. Dr. Frigo is the director of the Center for Strategy, Execution, and Valuation and the Strategic Risk Management Lab, and is the Ezerski Endowed Chair of Strategy and Leadership in the Driehaus College of Business at Depaul University in Chicago. We had a great time talking about the importance of leadership and how it needs to be a part of all business strategies. Without further ado, let's turn to the conversation we had. So my first question for you is, what is a leadership-driven strategy?
So leadership-driven strategy is applying great business strategy that we've learned in studying high-performing companies to the individual leader and also to teams within organizations. The idea is to identify what's the pattern of strategic leadership activities and team activities that create the most value for their team or their organization.
So my understanding of this, as you just said, it can be focused on individuals and onto teams in general. So kind of what's the difference, I guess? How can we apply great business strategy at the different levels?
So let me describe how this process evolved. The return-driven strategy, which is discussed in the book Driven that I authored a few years ago, describes the pattern of strategic activities of long-term high-performance companies. And those seminars and other works that we've done in presenting that framework to management teams, naturally, to internalize the way of thinking, they started thinking, the CFO teams and the executive teams and management teams that we worked with started thinking about that pattern within their own, at the micro level, at the individual leader level and at the team level. So when we do workshops with management teams, we often are presenting the return-driven strategy framework. And as part of the exercise for understanding and learning it and mastering it, we apply that to the individual leader. And then the next iteration would be applying it to the team. Usually in the case of CFOs, I'll present it to the individual CFO leader and also present it to the finance organization within that type of environment.
So to put this all together, it sounds like you've done a lot of practice with this, and I'm just curious, what kind of application, what kind of implementation have you seen? How has this leadership-driven strategy been used at companies, and how has it helped?
So, Mitchell, that's a good question. The leadership-driven strategy has been a mechanism or a way for, let's say, a CFO to develop a strategic finance function within his or her organization. So the exercise is usually focused on we often do a SWOT analysis, which would be doing strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in terms of assessing the strengths and weaknesses relating to different aspects of the leadership-driven strategy framework, which I'll describe in a few minutes.
Oh, that's awesome. And then just from your experience, what are some of the key takeaways from this strategy?
Yes, so let me just describe the logic and language of leadership-driven strategy. It's a hierarchy of 11 tenets or activities, and then 3 foundations. The first, the top number 1 tenet is ethically create value. That's the most important idea for an individual leader as well as for a team. Ethically create value. And then the next 2 levels of the framework are fulfill otherwise unmet constituent needs. Those constituent needs which are highly valuable and valued by their stakeholders. Those could be either internal or external constituents or stakeholders. And the next one, number 3, 10 and 3, is serve the right constituents with those needs. And then how do we do that? We do that by innovating our offerings as professionals, individual leaders, and teams. We do that by delivering our offerings efficiently and effectively. And we also do it by branding our offerings, being known for that offering and how we create value for our constituents. Those are called the competency tenets. And then supporting those would be 5 supporting tenets. The first supporting tenet is partner strategically, meaning partnering strategically to do what? To innovate, deliver, and brand our offerings targeted at fulfilling the otherwise unmet needs and the constituents we're serving, all with the idea of creating maximum value and doing so ethically. The next supporting tenet is redesign your value chain, the way you do things, and the way that you conduct your activities. Again, aligned with the innovation, delivery, and branding of the offerings. And then tenet 9 is engage yourself in others. Engage yourself in others means engage yourself in a positive manner to create value in terms of the individual leader or the team, and others means your other stakeholders. Balanced focus and options is the next supporting tenet, and that means taking care of the current business, but also creating the future, the future value creation. And this also involves some strategic quitting, meaning discontinuing certain activities that are not value added for a team or for a individual leader. And then finally, number 11 is communicate strategically and holistically, meaning we communicate the way we speak, the way we send emails, the way we communicate individually or as a team, the words we use, our appearance, all of that is the way we communicate our brand, which is important for a professional and for a team. And those are the 11 tenets, so supported by the foundations, genuine assets and unique capabilities. Those are what you have that make you unique. They're a combination. They're your skills, they're your experience, they're your relationships and so forth. They're the intangibles that you have as an individual leader and a team. And there's also sometimes missing genuine assets, which we have to try to figure out as leaders or teams. How do we create those missing genuine assets or partner to achieve them? The next foundation is vigilance to forces of change. And that means being very vigilant about force of change, technological, and all other changes that are going to create opportunities for us as leaders and also perhaps create threats for us as leaders and teams. It's really risk management. And then finally, the very baseline, the very base foundation, the bedrock is mission, personal milestones, and values. So here we look at identifying a mission or a why for a leader or a team, making that very explicit, and also having personal milestones. And generally the personal milestones are defined as follows. If we are meeting a year from today, what would need to happen or be achieved for us to be very satisfied with our progress? It gives us a real clear milestone in terms of tangible outcomes. And then finally, values. What are the 3 words that would describe your values? And that really goes back to the branding of an individual leader or a team, meaning what are the 3 words that you would like others, your constituents, use to describe you? And that's something I think in terms of strategic communication and branding yourself as a leader and how you create value, which is very important. So that's a high-level summary of the leadership-driven strategy framework.
Well, it sounds like that framework is very well structured, and a lot of support is given to it. A lot of thought went into it, and I can tell that it can certainly be applied at many different levels within an organization, many different individuals. But I'm curious, if someone was interested in trying to implement this strategy within their organization, what are some of the key questions you believe they should ask first before starting this kind of initiative?
So Mitchell, that's a great question, because when we look at this framework, really one of the fundamental questions would be, what are the otherwise unmet needs of my internal and external stakeholders as an individual leader and as a team? And more importantly, how are those otherwise unmet needs changing? Because obviously, if I as a leader or team, if I don't change, if I don't innovate my offerings, for example, and the unmet needs of my customers and my stakeholders and constituents changes, I'm out of alignment. I become irrelevant in that case. Would you agree, Mitchell?
Absolutely.
And the words we use in the framework would be innovate your offering. That means changing your offerings, sometimes in small, sometimes in more substantial ways, changing your offerings in ways that better fulfill the otherwise unmet needs, especially the changing otherwise unmet needs of our constituents.
Very, very good. I appreciate that, kind of giving me a little more insight into that question. I think the kind of the foundational, or the main perspective that we need to consider is, if the leadership team was to kind of pursue this strategy, how do you think they should address that? What should their initial steps be moving forward?
So what I've done in terms of workshops for teams and individual leaders is they would often do a background reading on leadership-driven strategy and return-driven strategy. They would often do a assignment, meaning doing an assessment of their strategy currently, their individual leadership-driven strategy. And then the workshopping that we do is really to be interactive with a team or a group of leaders to apply the way of thinking. It's really all about changing the way you think in a positive and powerful way. Changing the way you think in a positive way means ability to create greater value as an individual leader and as a team. Changing the way you think in a positive and powerful way, the word powerful means creating the most impact with minimum effort. We also call that judo strategy, using leverage.
Well, Dr. Frigo, this has been very insightful. I certainly enjoyed the conversation. Leadership is something that I truly am passionate about myself. So with your thought leadership, your expertise, are there any other last minute points that you would like to offer up to our listeners here on strategic leadership and the leadership-driven strategy?
Yes, Mitchell. I think looking at some of the work we've done with high-performance companies and research and high-performance leaders, including high-performance CFOs, we identify that those high-performance executives and teams, they think, act, and communicate strategically, not in a situational way, but strategically. They build unique and talented teams, and they're very innovative. So there's three characteristics that I think in applying leadership-driven strategy are very important for companies and their teams to consider.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.